Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. This is Melissa Rivera, your host of the Nonprofit Curious podcast. Today we have a guest speaker, Layton Harris. Layton and I actually we went to university together, and we were in a bunch of classes. And Layton's a great guy. I'm really excited for you guys to get to meet him and understand his story, why he's doing what he's doing. Layton, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do and where you are?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to meet everyone who is tuning into this at whatever time and place you end up hearing this. But my name is Layton Harris. So I'm from Springfield, Missouri. If you don't know where Springfield is, it's probably because it never shows up on a map very often. If you took Kansas City and St. Louis and you connected them down to southern central Missouri, you'd eventually land in Springfield, which is famous for Bass Pro and Andy's Frozen Custard, in my opinion, are our claims to fame. But what I do is I'm a financial advisor. I own a firm called For a Purpose Financial, and what we do is we help create simplicity to the complexities of finances for nonprofit business owners. And honestly, certainly much more than that. But I think the goal is that finances is such a complex and uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people because it's something we hold close to our chest. We don't just let anybody know that information, and it takes a lot of vulnerability to even share and seek out help. I think of us as our client's therapist for their financial wellness, just like a therapist would be for your mental wellness. So we're checking in on clients every year. We're updating their goals and decisions they're making, and helping them course correct when they get off track a bit, and helping them stay encouraged while also being accountable to the goals that they've set out. So that's what we do in a nutshell on a very high level.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And just to connect the dots for people, part of why I'm so excited to have you on today is I deal with early stage nonprofits, people thinking about starting a nonprofit, and there are so many compliance issues that people come to me with. And so that's where I'm an expert in like some of the legal and bylaws, formulating the core structure of a nonprofit. But people like Layton are really great because that's the finance side. That's some of those like advanced planning steps that are still really great to know in the early stages, just to be aware of and to know who to ask for help. So yeah, Layton's. Why don't you just share a little bit about like how can you support somebody in the nonprofit space? And then also somewhere in there, I'd love for people to hear how you became interested in being a financial planner because I love that story. But yeah, first question is how can a nonprofit or a small business owner be supported by what you do?
Yeah, so I think a lot of how they can be supported at its core level is getting really clear on the goals of the company. You know, for a purpose in its name, like purpose is the big thing we're chasing. And I think where that name came from is a lot of times I was chasing status over purpose in my life, whether it was with football, whether it was with school, whether it was with my success in this business. A lot of times as a Christian, like my identity could be in what I would consider an idol, which is a status, instead of really focus on the purpose, which is I am here to help people create financial abundance and clarity where most people lack. And I guess why I bring that up is because where I can help most people is getting really clear on what those goals actually are.
Yeah.
Financially, like statistics wise right now, 98.2% of Americans are not on track to retire by 67, which is Social Security retirement age. 98.2%. That means if there was 100 of us in this room, there is probably a likelihood that only two of us would actually be on track to our financial goal of retirement. And while retirement from a nonprofit standpoint isn't the only goal, I think it's a sign of a deeper rooted problem in our country's financial plans, which is that most of us don't even know what we care about soon enough. And it's not that you need to have everything figured out at 25, 35, 45 years old. That's not what I'm getting at. But you should have some type of direction and passion for if you're starting a nonprofit, right? There's a passion behind it. Nobody starts a nonprofit that is literally not for profit because they don't have a passion for something. And so what we need to do is we need to identify what is that purpose, what is that passion, what are the deep rooted truths behind it on why it's so important? Because somebody can tell me like, hey, I want to help support, Alzheimer's awareness. I want to help with cancer research. I want to help with, supporting human trafficking and fighting for the rights for those, men, women, and children. But usually what you find out is there's a deeper rooted story. Somebody may have been a victim of it themselves and they never want to see somebody go through it again. Somebody may have seen a family member have an illness and they saw how much it was debilitating and just not fun. There is usually a deep-rooted purpose behind somebody's goals professionally, and there usually is too financially.
Yeah.
So really, that is the big bulk of the legwork that they should experience with a financial advisor. Is where I can help them identify what is truly important. And the rest is easy from there. Financials are a tool.
Yeah.
They really are. And just like any expert craftsman, if I know what I'm trying to design, I know what tools to bring to the table.
Yeah. I love that you kind of honed in. One, obviously, you're passionate for what you do, and you understand listeners that are going to be tuning in, they're passionate as well. And so I think that really bridges the gap for the way people feel about addressing finance. That it can really be, like you said, a tool. I think people feel so intimidated by finance a lot of the times. And especially like I talk to a lot of early stage founders who are also working a full-time job. They're a single
Yes.
parent of three kids. They have a lot going on, and someday they'd love to just do their nonprofit full-time. Um, but like, where do you even begin with that from like a finance and for like, they've got kids. What are they've got to have their retirement in order. Like there are these pieces that, to your point, they feel so far down the road for a lot of people that they let it fall by the wayside because they have just so much other things going on. Can you share maybe like an example of like why that's important to use finance as a tool, like why they shouldn't put it off too long,
Yeah,
like make a case for why it's important for somebody.
absolutely. Let me use a case with a thing that has nothing to do with money then.
Perfect.
Say you're working a W-2 job and your boss comes in and says, hey, I want you to work longer, more hours than you ever have before. And don't worry about your kids or your spouse. You'll have time with them, eventually. You can wait till later to spend more time with them once you're retired. What would your response be?
Oh, I'd find another job.
100%. Because we
Yeah.
all know the time value of memory with our family. And even for those of us that maybe we don't have a good relationship with our parents, or maybe we don't have children, like there's probably somebody in your life, grandparents, friends, family, that you're like, hey, you could never tell me to go do this other thing a lot more because I would have less time now with these people because I know I'm never going to get that time back. The number one thing that leads to financial success is not a specific rate of return. It's the amount of time that our money has to actually multiply and compound. And it's a really simple concept, but the problem is most people never implement it. And it's because they never start something sooner before it's comfortable. Most of us wait for like the perfect time to start investing and start putting money back. And even if you started putting $50 a month back today, it would literally pay off dividends in the future. I mean, a great example of this is if you invested $500 a month for the next 25 years at an 8% return, hypothetically, you'd have about roughly $430,000 of wealth accumulated. However, if you take that 25 years and you make it 50 years, so you double the time without anything else changing, it'd be easy to assume our money would double. It actually goes from $430,000 to $3.45 million. By doubling your time, you 8x your money. And now the question most people ask is, well, if I had waited 2 years, it wouldn't make a difference. I'd only lose, if I was saving $500 a month, I'm only missing out on $12,000 I put in. And I really need that to buy a house right now, or I really need that to go on a vacation this year.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if you look at the end in mind, that 2 years didn't cost you $12,000. It actually costed you almost $240,000 for each year you waited.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the benefit of working with a financial planner like you is taking that really abstract, faraway concept and like distilling it down to like what does that look like for everyday me? And so yeah, I think that's really important. I
And even
think yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing I would add to that, like let's bring it back to the nonprofit side of things. Like, why didn't you wait to start this nonprofit till three
Yeah.
years from now?
Mm,
You knew right now it didn't necessarily make complete sense, probably. Most business owners in the nonprofit space, when they started, they have no clue if they're going to be able to make this work. It all feels super foreign. But
right.
the reason you took the leap now is because it would just take you longer to figure it out. And we all have an expiring clock at the end of our lives. And a difference of 3 years could be the difference in helping 12s of thousands of people that
Hmm.
deserve help from your foundation that you're working hard to make a reality. And if you don't start now, maybe no one else will.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And actually, I feel like this might even be a great time to share why you got into, like, why you're where you are.
Yeah. So the reason I'm at where I am is, I actually started this career while, Melissa and I were at Evangel University together. I started it my junior year or sophomore year of college as an intern. Um, and truthfully, I didn't have a passion for this when I came into it, but I developed a passion pretty fast due to just some accidents that happened in my own family's life.
Hmm.
So my father was hit by a car on a bike ride 5 days after I accepted the internship with these financial advisors I was learning from. My father went from a civil engineer, crushing it, making six figures plus a year, took care of our family. My mom never had to work, was putting two kids through private education, good investor, frugal, whole 9 yards, great steward of his money. But like the great Mike Tyson says in the world of boxing, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Mm.
And it's a funny quote, and I kind of giggle at it because like, hey, this is a lot more severe than getting punched in the mouth. Like my father, at the accident, was pronounced dead for 60 seconds. And fortunately, by the complete healing power of God, 24 months later, he is back on a bike and actually eventually wins the state championship for cycling again. And it was a huge faith booster. Like if I had ever doubted if God existed, at that point, I don't anymore.
Mm.
But what I saw during that time was my dad was without income for 24 months. Because even though he couldn't show up to work and do his job, your paycheck is only guaranteed if you can show up and do that job. A
Right.
salary is only guaranteed if you can perform the work. And he couldn't anymore. So he actually went back to work after that, but they didn't pay him during the interim. And that really affected our family financially. Fortunately, he had been saving well for decades and decades, and he was able to weather the storm pretty well. But I saw it hurt our family in ways where they were starting to have to make compromising decisions. Are we going to have to sell the house because he's not out of the hospital yet? He's still on a breathing machine. My
Yeah.
mom started to wonder if we'll have to early withdraw from retirement accounts, or even worse, are we have to claim bankruptcy if this gets too bad?
Right.
And from there, I realized, man, my dad and my mentor actually introduced me to some things. He's like, your dad was a good saver and investor, but he failed to plan. Planning isn't just about what we do to grow our money, it's what we do to protect our money, to grow
Mhm.
it, and to steward it along the way when circumstances change. It's about having the unsexy parts of finances established. It's kind of like the foundation of a house. Nobody invites people over to their house and says, hey, check out this sweet concrete slab below my house. It's really cool. They want to show the living room, the countertops, all the nice things, but they know very well if that foundation wasn't there and a storm came, their whole investment would be ruined.
Right.
And unfortunately, because of my dad's lack of planning, it hurt them. And they were able to bounce back, but not all of us have 25 years to save up enough money to protect ourselves from that. Some of
Hmm.
us have been on this earth for, 30 years, you
Yeah.
know? So what can we do now to make sure that we're protected from that risk, that we are planning for the unexpected so that we can guilt-free invest, grow, and steward money without the fear of the unknown?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think it's like it's a heavy thing to go through, for sure. So I appreciate how you let God sort of rewrite your story and narrative and put put something really difficult as like a fire under you to start something to really make a difference in the world in a powerful way. I think that's what brings a lot of people to listening to this podcast is they also had something like you said earlier, whether they're a victim of something or they've gone through something a family member has, like that those things truly shape us so much. And
Absolutely.
I think it's when we're able to take that thing and translate it into doing more good in the world instead of being upset and bitter at the things that happen to us, that makes our lives so much richer, you know?
Absolutely. And it's kind of ironic. If I've ever thought faith aligned with something, my firm is called For a Purpose Financial. And when I saw you email over the podcast link, it literally says pursuit of purpose.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, hey, the reason this correlates so well is nonprofit people are only chasing purpose majority of the
Yeah.
time. And so it's like, man, if we're chasing purpose, how can we make sure there is no potholes that deviate our purpose? If I could tell you that, hey, on mile marker 5, there's going to be a pothole on the left side, so you're going to want to shade a little bit to the right on the road, that's ultimately what gives me joy, is helping you miss potholes that disrupt your purpose.
Yeah. And I think, again, kind of going back to what it is that you do and how that intersects with our nonprofit space, I think, like I said, it's so overwhelming to start an organization, whether it's for profit, nonprofit, it doesn't matter. Like, it's like drinking from a fire hose. And having guidance, like you're saying, is like having somebody like a lifeguard come swim next to you almost of like, hey, like I'm here if you need something, like if you need like a break, like we can tread water together, or even like somebody with a life raft, like just come on, like get on this boat with me. And so yeah, I love what you do. Obviously, that's why you're on here. Can you share maybe like a couple of little tidbits of like the process of what it is that you do with a nonprofit? How do you help them? Maybe give some tangible like pieces of like how to work with you, I guess.
Yeah. If I could paint a picture of what it would look like to me, I think a lot of people are familiar with like the home building process in some kind of way. So like imagine you were going to build your dream home. Most people hire what's called a general contractor to help with that construction process and building the home to your vision and the reality of what you wanted to see. What the general contractor has to do is he has a lot of subcontractors that are working under him to do specific roles, you know. And in the financial world, it's like, hey, you may have a consultant for the nonprofit, you may have a attorney, an accountant, a banker, a lender, a realtor, and they're all, need to be working together as a team. Where I, as a financial advisor, can come in is I can be that general contractor that just makes sure all the subcontractors are not just thinking about, hey, how do I do my role for the company really well, but how do I also be conscious of, hey, what other areas might my decisions affect? An accountant may be focused on getting a ton of deductions every year for the nonprofit, but deductions can sometimes lead to future tax liability at a more inopportune time if we're not careful. And an advisor or a banker may want you to make a certain investment decision or financial decision for the nonprofit, but your attorney can help you understand the legal ramifications of, hey, if you do that, here's the things you can't do with that money, to prevent you from audits or misuse of nonprofit funds, which could affect your reputation. And so I guess what I get with all this is the general contractor, which is the financial advisor. My goal is to make sure that we're facilitating with your whole team what the main mission is and making sure everybody works together, integrated, instead of as like separate entities. Because the last thing I want you to do is be chasing around 8 different people to get a clue with what's going on in your life. What I would love to do is be one person that you go to. I coordinate with the team and I give you clarity so you're not worried about the complexity and you focus on the day-to-day operations of doing what you do best, which is helping people in your nonprofit.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that's exactly what people are looking for, what people need is a lot of the time it's like a one man show, one woman show, for the
Yeah.
first like couple years even. And you rely heavily on your board of directors and volunteers and some pro bono work even. And so to have somebody else come in as like a expert voice to share those key pieces that maybe like slip people's minds, but like you're saying, kind of set them up for a successful future and have that solid foundation. It makes such a huge difference, especially, and I tell my clients this all the time too, especially if you really do want to go the long distance.
Yeah.
Um, it's so easy to focus on keeping your head above water and to tread, but really, if you want a sustainable nonprofit, it means taking a look at some of these pieces. So,
Well, and
yeah, thank
I think, a simple way for people to be prepared of what to expect with me if you were to ever interact with us. It's I shared the big picture here, but here's how like an interaction would actually look. You first have a discovery meeting with me to identify your goals and what's important. Once we've identified the goals, then you sit down and we actually have an education meeting where we actually educate the client, hey, as a nonprofit or whether it's personal or business planning, here's the things you need to be thinking about along the way based off the goals that are important to you. And here's the things that we would start considering utilizing. And
yeah.
then the third meeting is more of a recommendations meeting where it's like, hey, we're going to sit down and tell you what to do and where. And it's your decision on if you want to implement it or not. And then from there, if we agree it makes sense to start implementing, we have a fourth meeting where we actually start that process and begin onboarding the tools that are going to help you create more financial clarity. So,
Yeah, so it's very much like a initial meeting, educational time with you guys, and then really diving into those like tailored recommendations and then followed with implementation. I think that's perfect. Like again, it feels like taking the fire hose and siphoning it down to like a glass of water at a time.
yes,
And then you have the support that you need to like implement, which is so powerful.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Leighton, thank you so much for joining. Do you have any final tips? And then I'll ask you where people can find you and all those things.
Yeah, I think the tip that I would give is that um, never let yourself think that you have it all figured out. Um, the smartest person, or what I should say is the smartest person in the room, usually doesn't think they're the smartest person in the room because they're humble enough to realize like, hey, I can always get better. I can always grow. Your nonprofit might be doing 30 million a year right now. It may be crushing it and having massive impact. It doesn't mean you can't get better. There's a reason professional athletes still have coaches. There's a reason the biggest, tech companies in America still have consultants. It's because at the end of the day, the saw can always be sharpened. It can always get sharper, and it can always get better. And truthfully, the companies that have the biggest impact are the ones that are lifelong learners. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm doing some good things, but I want to keep doing better. That's where you'll grow, whether it's with me, whether it's with another team. Seek knowledge, and it will be provided to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like my biggest takeaway is really like the power of small bite-sized pieces. So I definitely, anyone who's listening, who wants to connect with you. Also, Leighton just has like incredible social media tidbits. So if you're looking to learn some of those bite-sized pieces, get a feel for what he's doing before booking a call, definitely check him out. Leighton, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. My Instagram handle is the real Layton Harris, and then Facebook, LinkedIn shouldn't be hard to find. Fortunately, Layton is not a super common name, so it's easier to narrow down on the search. If you're struggling to find me on there, you may search Springfield, Missouri, and I should pop up from there.
And I can
Outside
put
of
that
that,
in the show
you can
notes.
email me at Layton, which is Layton .Harris at nm.com, and I'll be sure to get back to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Leighton. Everyone, I'll put those links in the show notes as well so you can see it down below. And thank you again, Leighton. It's been so good having you on.
Thank you for having me.